Come on, black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Yeah, it's straight talk with Valerie. Come on.
I'm so happy about tonight's show. You know how passionate I am about my hometown of Inkster, Michigan. And tonight I have two of Inktown's finest, Mr. Aaron Sims and Mr. Robert Turley. What inspired you to focus so heavily on the city of Inkster in your memoir? But a lot of people write books and they call it a memoir, and they might say, well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and they move on, from there. You did not. You delved deep into the rich history and the culture and the diversity of Inkster, Michigan. What inspired you to do that?
That's a very good question, because I did start out just writing a memoir. And I knew that Inkster would be a big part of that memoir, but as I kept writing, I just found that it was just natural to make it more and more a part of my story and of my memoir. And just the deeper I got into talking about Inkster, the deeper I got into the history and how much of that history we're living today, and how that has shaped Inkster, and what is unique about our history also moved me to write more. There's so much that's unique about our history. There's so much that's amazing about our history. It just became a memoir that was, I knew much of it would be set in Inkster, but as I was saying, as I was going along, I just felt more and more compelled to write on the history and the background, to provide background information on the city as well. And the other thing, too, is that, I've always realized that Inkster is a big part of who I am today, and as in my travels, wherever I go, I know that I always take Inkster with me in my heart, and I know that it has shaped me. So it figures throughout the whole book, no matter where I am, at what point in my life we're talking about in the book. Inkster is a part of it throughout the book. So that's why I decided to call the book Inktown.
A story? Was it a person? What astonished you the most by participating in that tour of our great city?
I believe it was just a part about knowing that Inkster was the last stop for the Underground Railroad, right there on Michigan Avenue and Henry Ruff. That was the last stop as the slaves was going to freedom, and they had the chance to go over to Canada. So Inkster was their last stop before they went that way.
Wow. That brings me full circle, because I said Harriet Tubman carried the torch and I'm running with it from there. I had no idea. So for our listeners who don't know much about Inkster, or many positive things about Inkster, that's why I'm so elated to have you here today to spotlight some of the things, because I brag a lot about our city. What I brag about most is the quality of the education that I received. My success is built off of the education that I received in the Inkster public school system. And anybody that from any other school district that wants to stand toe-to-toe with me as an orator, a researcher, a writer, a motivational speaker, you name it, I'm ready to do that.
Yes,
and
that's
I
right.
guarantee you they will be licking their wounds out the door.
There you go.
Right? I just spent a week with inner city youth at a camp in Onstead, Michigan, up by Brooklyn, Michigan, close to Adrian. And we did a college tour to Adrian College while we were up there last week. Walked into their gymnasium, and I see
Mr.
Henry
Hughes.
Hank Hughes.
Mr. Hughes.
He still holds the highest point shot record at that institution, 62 years. It was in 1957 when he accomplished that.
Wow.
And I was so proud. I wasn't the tour guide or anything. I'm there to supervise the kids. The kids were raising their hand, asking questions. Hell, I raised mine like, hey, I have something to say. I wanted them to know that, though.
Right.
And it made me feel so proud that he was from Inkster. And no one could break that record.
And he was an icon at Inkster High, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our youth
He
officer.
was.
Oh, yeah.
He was.
He really shaped that school.
Mr. Mosley would run and chase you and scream and everything. Mr. Hughes was just cool as a cucumber. but let you know that knowledge is something that you need and no one can take it away from you, and that's what you're here for.
And he kept you in line with that paddle too.
Oh, yeah. I never got the paddle, but I know people that did get it. So those are some of the great things that I remember from Inkster High.
And Valerie may also mention, it's very important, this is not just a house that Malcolm lived in. This is the house that he writes about in chapter 12 of his autobiography. This is where he's making the transition from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X. And he talks in detail about the house and the household and what an impact that had on him living with Wilfred and working at the cut rate department store in Inkster. I really encourage you to read chapter 12 of the autobiography. Read the whole book, of course, but especially that chapter. Unfortunately, he refers to Inkster as Detroit because I guess he and his co-author, Alex Haley, who also has roots and connection in Inkster, felt that a national and international audience would be more familiar with Detroit. But we now know from, as Aaron here has confirmed, from the family and from FBI records and other documents that, in fact, that home where he was paroled to Wilfred and that he writes about in chapter 12 was 4336 William Street in Inkster.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And we also tell people when we're telling the story, we let people know that we're the only city that had all 3 episodes of Malcolm X. So we had Malcolm when he was Malcolm Little, we had him when he was Malcolm X, and we had him when he was Malik El Shabazz when he came back to Inkster.
Yeah, because he continued to visit family there and stay there sometimes, and even writes in chapter 12 that some of the biggest civil rights leaders of the time would meet with him in that very home.
We're going to end on this note. I read something that you said, basically win or lose, your heart is still for the city. And you're going to work for the city. When I saw you out there, and you're a person that sits back and you don't like to be, you do your work and you move in silence. But when someone was evicted and you gathered people together, and when it started thundering and lightning and you were still out there with Father Clifton and a few other people putting stuff, it brings tears to my eyes because we don't have people with that heart anymore. So peace and love to you, brother. I know that you said from your heart, even if you lose, you will still work for the city. You will still collaborate with others for the good of the city.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe it because you're not just talking it, you're walking it. And you're doing it right now.
You know what I call that, Valerie? I always say it's that Inkster love.
Yes.
It's that special brand of Inkster love, right?